We're going. We're live.
So welcome everybody to the New Jersey Globe Save Jersey debate between the candidates for the Republican nomination for State Assembly in the 26th District, Assemblyman Brian Bergen and former Assemblywoman Betty Lou DeCrose. I'm David Wildstein, the editor of the New Jersey Globe. Matt Rooney, the editor of Save Jersey, is joining me. We are the moderators, not the so-called moderators. We are the moderators of this debate. Only Mr. Bergen is participating in tonight's debate. Mrs. DeCrose declined our invitation. In our invitation, we said the debate will go on as long as one candidate accepts. And I just want to say debates are a critical part of campaigns. It's important for voters to have an opportunity to see and hear candidates at the same time so that the electorate can be at its most informed. That's why Abraham Lincoln and Stephen Douglas traveled on horseback up and down the state of Illinois while campaigning for the Senate. And while I don't take sides in campaigns and I don't take sides on the issues, I have to express my disappointment that Mrs. DeCrose is not participating. I think democracy is poorly served by the lack of a real debate. We've done several this year. This is our last primary debate. I want to thank Chris Del Borello and Nick DeSilvio and Josh Akins and Dawn Fantasia and Mike Ganamort and Jason Sarnosky for participating in these very important forums. And let me turn it over to Matt Rooney.
Thank you, Mr. Wildstein, and I want to welcome everyone who is joining us for this LD26 Republican debate. I echo my colleague, Mr. Wildstein's disappointment that we have an empty chair, but look, that's the way that it goes. Candidates make choices the same way that voters make choices. As the Republican panelist, unapologetically partisan, participating in this debate, I want to see Republicans debate other Republicans, because if you haven't been living under a rock, you know that Republicans right now are in the process of deciding the direction of our party, not just at the national level, but here in New Jersey. And that's why I feel so passionately in these debates, because it's the only real opportunity we have as primary voters to have that discussion and have a direct candidate comparison before those primary votes are cast. So, Assemblyman Bergen, we do appreciate you accepting the challenge, albeit in this case your own challenge, to join us tonight and answer some questions for Mr. Wildstein and myself. I'll jump right in and ask the first question, since the chair is empty and one of your primary opponents is not here. Assemblywoman, or former Assemblywoman DeCrose, has repeatedly accused you of being all bark and no bite. She says that you spend your time delivering addresses on the floor of the assembly. Some of your rhetoric, you'll admit, is very direct. You're not afraid to take on the Democrats and call them out on the floor. But she says that you have accomplished comparatively little relative to how much you talk. What do you say to that allegation?
Well, I guess it ultimately depends what you see as our role down there. And I believe that I've helped to redefine the role of the minority since I got down there into one that's a more aggressive minority. I mean, the role of any minority party in the two-party system is to beat the majority back to the middle. We cannot allow them to overextend themselves as much as they want to, and we have to keep them in check. And that's what I've been doing, quite frankly, since I've been there. And there are tremendous amount of successes. So you're right. My opponent says that we don't have wins, what she calls wins, because she believes that how many bills you get passed, even if it's a license plate bill or an innocuous bill that does nothing, is a measure of success. Well, I'll tell you what a measure of success is, and one of the major ones that I've had recently. The state of New Jersey tried to pass this completely unconstitutional concealed carry bill. Completely unconstitutional. We knew it was unconstitutional, and I got up and in the committee challenged the sponsor, on the floor challenged the sponsor, debated on the floor. And as a result of my debate, a part of the reason for, as a result of my debate, that law passed by the state of New Jersey was restricted by a judge. And people may say, well, okay, maybe it wasn't exactly what you did, but I was cited in a footnote on the judge's decision directly related to the debate. So I proved that when you push back against the Democrats, that you can legitimately affect and stop bad policy from happening. If that's being an ineffective legislator, I don't know what she wants. I mean, should I get a bill passed for a fraternity or sorority license plate like we did last time, or Kimchi Day? Is that a measure of success? I don't think so. But stopping the most unconstitutional piece of concealed carry legislation in the country, I consider that being pretty effective.
And let me ask you, Assemblyman, on this. Betty Lou DeCroce, when she was in the legislature, she served for 10 years. I think you served with her for 2 years. Tell me why she shouldn't be in the legislature again.
Well, part of being in the legislature, that's the basics are showing up to do your job. Nobody can dispute these facts. I think I even sent them to you guys and other people, all the raw data that anybody can look at. But Betty Lou DeCroce had 4,817 opportunities to cast floor votes in the state assembly. She missed 1,059 of those votes. She wasn't there to do the basics of her job, which is to cast votes on the floor of the assembly. So that's one reason. That's 22% of all the available time she had to vote. She didn't do the basics of her job. And secondly, she is part of the Republican Party that was not taking action, that was not pushing back, that was not aggressive, that was allowing the Democrats to push their agenda far more than they needed to be. She represents the old way of doing things. The new way of doing things is we are more aggressive, we are more bold, we push back harder. And my opponent doesn't fit into that model. And case in point, when we pushed back against the vaccine mandates at the State House, while I was upstairs with others, walking around the state troopers and taking our seats in defiance, Betty Lou DeCroce was downstairs in the State House basement, not participating at all and waiting to see how it happened. And then in the very next session, when 90% of the Republican caucus was outside of the State House participating remotely in protest, Betty Lou DeCroce was showing her Vax card and going to the floor. So she represents the old way of doing things. The new way of doing things is a more aggressive, bold Republican Party that takes the fight to the Democrats and stands up for the people.
So carrying forward this idea of a bolder Republican Party, right now at the national level, we're watching Republicans have an internal debate over the debt ceiling, whether they should hold out and risk a default by demanding very steep spending cuts to the federal budget, or whether or not they should make a deal, as Kevin McCarthy's proposing, and kind of force Biden in their direction and declare victory for having made the president move. Republicans in New Jersey are going to have to make a somewhat similar decision very soon with the state budget, a budget that, because that Phil Murphy's an author of it, is bound to include a lot of spending and a lot of spending priorities that conservative Republicans are going to disagree with. So what does a conservative opposition look like to the Murphy budget, assuming, of course, that you plan on opposing it?
Well, I do plan on opposing it in the way that it's currently presented. And I don't think that there's anything that Murphy would propose that would meet the criteria for me to get on board, or my Republican colleagues. I mean, the budget in the state of New Jersey has gone up from $36 billion when Chris Christie left office to now $53 billion. That is a large gap that would have to be closed for any Republicans to support this budget at all. Do we, as elected officials, occasionally need to compromise? The answer is yes, but not when we're this far apart. It's going to be, I would say, impossible to do that. I mean, Murphy would have to come so far in our direction for us to get on board, but he doesn't need us on board. He doesn't need us on board right now. And what Republicans should not be doing, absolutely should not be doing, is trading their votes for little tiny things for their district, or little tiny favors or small bills. That stuff is not worth it. If we're not going to get some fundamental change and relief for our taxpayers that's that's big and permanent, then we shouldn't be moving. What we can't do is give in and compromise for small things that add no value. But whenever there is an opportunity for us to use leverage, if it does present itself, and we can do real tremendous good for the people, we should always, of course, do that if the opportunity presented itself.
Well, let me ask a follow-up on these questions. Right now in Trenton, Speaker Craig Coughlin has proposed what he is calling a tax cut for senior citizens. He wants to return money back to people age 65 on their property taxes. 50% of their property taxes capped at 10%. Some people say if this had been a Republican proposal, and the leadership of your party has talked about returning money back to the people and not having it sit on account. Why were you so quick to reject that proposal as opposed to try and find some middle ground where Republicans and Democrats could get together and cut taxes in New Jersey?
Yeah, so I'm not rejecting the proposal at all. I don't think it's a genuine proposal. I think it is a ploy to get votes. Speaker Coughlin had a bill that I currently have that I've been pushing many times, and you both have covered this, for disabled veteran property tax relief. It was Speaker Coughlin's bill for many years until he became Speaker and had the opportunity to actually get it done, and he dropped it. I've brought it to the floor now 4 times. All 4 times the Democrats have rejected it, and that would give property tax relief to disabled veterans based on their service disability rating, ironically with a cap of $10,000, which is the same cap I believe being proposed by him for the seniors. Him and his Democratic caucus have refused to move that forward. Now, let me just tell you, there are only 60,000 disabled veterans in the state of New Jersey, and they have not taken action on this piece of legislation. For me to believe that the Speaker is genuinely planning on getting done this bill for the seniors would fly in the face of everything that I'm witnessing. And if, in fact, they do it, it'll be an election year gimmick with a one-time thing for money, one-time rebate, and it'll be done. Look, if this bill comes up for a vote to return money to seniors, I'm going to vote for it, okay? I'm going to vote for it. I think it's good. I think being seniors is tough. We don't want them moving out of New Jersey. We want them here. But I don't see that ever happening. Again, I think it's a disingenuous proposal done in an election year for election purposes, and that's it. I would like to see it done. I would like to see our disabled veterans get relief. I'd like to see our seniors get relief. There are tons of different property tax relief programs on the table. There's tons of different tax relief programs on the table. I'd like to see any of them get done. But every time the Democrats do it, it's a gimmick. And I'm not going to let them get away with pretending that it's not. That's all.
So shifting gears just a little bit here, it appears that the Murphy administration may be poised to mandate certain controversial vaccines for school children. We're talking about the flu vaccine. We're also talking about the COVID vaccine and also the HPV vaccine, which is hugely controversial among certain groups of parents. You traditionally, and if I'm wrong, you'll correct me, appear to line up on the side of medical freedom, that movement which calls for greater parent involvement in deciding which vaccines are mandatory, if any, and which are not. Would you oppose these mandates were you given the opportunity? And just generally speaking, what do you think government's role should be, if any, in mandating vaccinations, both for school children and also the population writ large?
So I would not support this at all. I certainly would not support this. I stand with medical freedom. I do believe in vaccines, and I believe vaccines work. The COVID vaccine is the exception, of course. But vaccines, by and large, are a good thing. They're a good thing for society, a good thing for the world. However, they shouldn't be forced on people like our government tries to do. I mean, I took it to the extreme with my fight on the state house floor about this, because I don't believe that these vaccines should be mandated. It's not right. There have to be ways where people can opt out. And if they don't offer that, I'm not going to support it ever. That's just the bottom line. I mean, the government's role should be education, I would say, and the government should tell people the pluses and minuses of the different vaccines and let people and their doctors make decisions. That would be the best case scenario. And people can make good, educated decisions. If you present them with the facts from all sides and let people decide for themselves, they're going to do what's right for them. And I believe that's the role the government should have. And I absolutely, positively will not support what they're rumoring to do right now.
One of the I don't want to say issues, but something that looms large in legislative races, despite the best faith effort of the modern day founders in 1947 to run legislative races based on state issues and not in federal election years, is the upcoming race for the Republican presidential nomination. I know that that's something a lot of your constituents are concerned about. At least until the new map happens, one of your constituents is about to announce his candidacy. I read today for the presidency. Assemblyman, are you for Donald Trump? Do you want Donald Trump to be the nominee next year, or do you want somebody else? And if it's somebody else, who are you considering?
Well, so politics, a day is like a year and a year is like a decade. So who the heck knows what's going to happen between now and then? I tell you, I do like Trump. I love Trump's policies. I think he did a fantastic job policy-wise as president. I like a lot about DeSantis. And I think we got to see how this race starts to shake out. And people are going to start to pull away, and the dynamics are going to constantly shift. So I don't really know. I couldn't tell you who I want to be the nominee necessarily, because I want to see them start going toe to toe and debate these issues and debate foreign policy. I mean, it would be great to see presidential candidates for president really debate foreign policy and see where they stand. It's very important to me as a former soldier on where a president would stand on foreign policy. And too often we get caught up in crazy issues that don't mean anything, but that one's a big one that we should focus on. So I'm not trying to duck the question. I just don't really know. I want to hear them both talk and both debate, and then all the rest of the candidates there. But I do like Trump and I do like DeSantis. So we'll see.
One quick follow up, and I realize that I'm putting you in a spot, because
I'm okay with it.
You support, in your home county, but and Mrs. DeCrose is not here to answer the same question.
Yeah.
But former Governor Chris Christie, right now your constituent, would you consider supporting him for the nomination?
I don't see that happen. I don't think that he's going to get the momentum to be someone that is going to be a player in this particular race. If he does materialize and he gets some traction, then we'll see. I mean, I think he's a great guy. So we'll have to see. But as of right now, I don't see that happening.
Okay.
So speaking of Chris Christie, both he and Donald Trump have been very critical of Ron DeSantis on just about every front. Foreign policy, the war with Disney. Lately, this week, it seems like the new frontier in this tug of war in the Republican primary concerns COVID. Donald Trump seems to be siding with Andrew Cuomo, not someone who is traditionally a darling of the Republican Party, over Ron DeSantis in this never-ending debate as to which state did a better job in tackling COVID-19. Where do you come down, Brian Bergen, in that particular verbal tug of war? Who did a better job, Florida and New York, and why do you think so?
Well, I got to tell you, I'm in the middle of a pesky little primary right now, so my attention's been a little divided away from the news for this past week. So I haven't really heard both arguments, but Florida did a fantastic job during COVID. There's no doubt about it. DeSantis did an amazing job. Florida was well run, doing things great. Who did terrible was the state of New Jersey. I mean, that goes without saying. So Florida did the best job, hands down. I will give it to Florida. And in last place by a long shot is the state of New Jersey. We did an awful job. And I pushed back from the very beginning. I don't know if you remember, but I introduced, and it was, as far as I know, you can fact check me, the first piece of legislation introduced in the country during COVID to curtail the governor's executive order powers. Because as a new entrant to the government, I quickly realized that, wait a second, this governor has too much power. And so I introduced, I think it was Bill A4147 at the time, if I remember the name of the number appropriately, but to curb the governor's executive order powers and make him be held accountable and have to come to the legislature every 15 days for every executive order to be reapproved. So I saw early on that we were on the wrong path, and I fought hard to hold the governor accountable the whole way through. And by the way, I have to make some mention. So did Senator Joe Panaccio. Senator Panaccio is one of my running mates here in this particular race. Senator Panaccio really held the governor accountable, particularly on what he did with the nursing homes. And so he deserves some kudos for that too. But I guess I'm straying away and taking some liberties here. To answer your question, it's Florida who did a better job.
Thanks.
What do you think?
I want to read to you, Assemblyman, a text message that I received. I think it was this morning, and Mrs. DeCrose isn't here to ask these questions, so I will ask on her behalf. She texted me this morning, and I think many others. Brian Bergen isn't a real conservative, and he's ill prepared for the job as state legislator. Yeah. Are you a real conservative, and what in your background has prepared you to be a legislator besides the last 4 years in the legislature?
Yeah. So, well, thank you. I guess that would be a key ingredient too. The fact that I've been there for 4 years, arguably doing a pretty darn good job, although she doesn't think so clearly. So I would say if I go back to before I was a legislator, the thing that prepared me the most to be a legislator was being in the military, hands down, because it taught me how to lead people, how to work with people, and how to stand up for people and not be afraid. And that's why I was so active on the floor. From the very first session to my very first day, I've been standing up on the floor, arguing and debating and doing what the job of government is, because I know how important it is, because I was a soldier on the receiving end of the decisions of government. And I have always been enamored by the fact that how our government operates. And I always wanted to be an effective part of that. And that's what I've been doing. So for her to say that I'm not effective is ridiculous. For reasons I mentioned before, but also to say that I'm not conservative, she's just not paying attention. And she is widely regarded as one of the most liberal Republicans in the state legislature while she was there. So it's an attempt to come at me from the right. And if I was advising her a campaign strategy, I would have told her that might be a viable campaign strategy. The problem for her is there's no daylight over there. She can't come over. And plus she has a record. She's not some candidate who just showed up out of nowhere that can put out all these false accusations and these lies and pretend to be somebody that she's not, because she doesn't have the record to back it up. I'll just give you one small example. There was a vote to name a building after Judy Persicelli, who orchestrated New Jersey's terrible approach to COVID. Terrible. So there was a bill up to name a building after her. I voted no. Betty Lou DeCroce abstained on that vote. I mean, if there's ever a vote to vote no on, that would be the vote. And I have a laundry list. We can go on all day long about her voting record. The bottom line is she's making an attempt to put herself to the right of me, and it's impossible. And I don't think any of the voters are fooled, quite frankly.
So many of your constituents, even though they're a little bit away from the water, I know it's all relative, spent this past weekend down the Jersey Shore. Maybe not this season, but possibly as soon as next year. Phil Murphy and his allies want to put hundreds of wind turbines off the coast of New Jersey. One of the many opposition arguments leveled against these particular projects is that they may be killing off scores of dolphins and whales and other marine life off the coast. of the state. But there's also serious doubts as to whether or not these constructions will actually lower our energy bills or maybe even raise them. I'd like to know what your position is on these wind turbines, since they're a hot topic in New Jersey right now. And also just more generally, what do you think an energy future looks like for New Jersey? Is it Phil Murphy's version of the Green Energy Master Plan, the Green New Deal here in New Jersey, or is there a better Republican way forward?
Well, so the windmills, it's been a complete disaster, clearly, and this is where partisan stupidity gets in the way of progress for the world. Okay, so we have these windmills going up, and there are whales and dolphins dying. Nobody can dispute the fact that they're dying, and nobody can dispute the fact that they started dying recently, and the project started recently. But they're so dug in on this project that they can't even take a common sense approach and take a break. Just pause everything, take a break, and let's see if, in fact, there is improvement and if we can tie these two things to each other or not. But they're so dug in on this partisan approach to their new energy plan that the governor is not being smart or reasonable, quite frankly, or are his Democratic colleagues being reasonable in this regard. The solution is stop what you're doing and see if it gets better. And if it gets better, then what you're doing is part of the problem. And if it doesn't get better, then maybe in the course of time, we can rule that out. All right. So that's what I have to say about the whales and the dolphins dying and the stupidity of the project going on down there. Now, in terms of it being a good path forward for our future, no, I don't think there's anybody who actually believes that the windmills being put offshore are going to reduce our energy costs. I don't think there is anybody. And if there is, I haven't read it yet, where somebody's actually said it's going to reduce our energy cost. They're doing it's part of a progressive agenda. It's not being done to reduce energy costs. And it's a bad idea for a million different reasons, which we don't have time to talk about today. But if I was king for a day, or I'm Governor Bergen with a full Republican legislature, I would start investing heavily in nuclear in this state. That is the better source of energy. Technology has significantly improved in nuclear. Nuclear is the way to go. And it's the place that New Jersey should be investing our time and our resources. And if we do that, that will truly save us money in the future, and it will be good for the environment. Nuclear is fantastic for the environment and the new technologies that they have. And we're not going to be doing something that's completely ridiculous, which is what they're doing right now.
So, Assemblyman, time goes very quickly, and I said, since it's only one of the two candidates show up, we only hold you for a half hour here instead of the normal hour. I want to thank you again for participating.
Thank you.
And let me just come back to you for a minute. If there's voters have been voting by mail for a month now. Early voting begins on Friday. Tuesday is the day. It is election day. It is the day that will determine your fate and the fate of others. So let me see if there's any, before we go back to Matt, any closing remarks you'd like to make to your constituents?
Sure, I absolutely do. So we have a couple days left, 6 days left until this election. Let me just assure everybody watching, and you two here, that my team is going to sweep this election. We are the better team, better people. This race is not only about ideas, but it's what's good for us versus what's bad for us. Senator Panaccio is a fantastic senator who deserves the job. He is an awesome teammate, a great conservative, and a great person. Tom Mastrangelo is a bad person who does not deserve to be a state senator. And with Panaccio and Weber and myself and the rest of our team, we are going to sweep this election. And most importantly, as soon as we're done with this election, on June 7th, the real work begins. Because on June 7th, I'm going to get back on the road with the Bergen Brigade, and I'm going to go door to door for other people, and I'm going to help us to get back a Republican majority. That's what I'm here to do. It's a shame that we have to waste our resources on something like we're wasting it on now for people who would not be good at the job. and are not in it for the right reasons. But that's what we have to do. When it's done, I promise you, to the people watching, I'm going to come out strong and support the Republican Party to help us get a majority. And I'm going to love every second of it. So if you need me, call me. I can't do anything for you for 6 days, but on June 7th, I'm all yours.
Fantastic. Thank you, Assemblyman Bergen. I also want to thank David Wildstein. I think this is our third debate that we've done in collaboration between Save Jersey and New Jersey Globe this debate season, this primary season. Hopefully you all learned something. And of course, most importantly, we hope the voters in the respective districts that are preparing to vote, if you haven't voted already, were able to get some insight into the candidates, including Assemblyman Brian Bergen, who we're very grateful joined us this evening for this half hour of discussion and questions. And don't forget, you can return that mail-in ballot. I almost said absentee. I'm never going to not do that, David. I think it's going to take a few more years. You can still return that mail-in ballot, have it stamped by the post office up until Election Day. There's also early voting in New Jersey now, June 2nd through June 4th. And then, of course, primary day itself, Tuesday, June 6th, where you can turn out in all 40 districts and make your selection for, in this case, who is going to lead the Republican Party in this state for the next 2 years. So again, on behalf of Save Jersey, New Jersey Globe, thank you very much for watching tonight, and we'll see you on primary day.
Thanks, everybody.
Thank you, guys.